Well, what's up again there, guys? Ryan here, the 3 Topics Gamer here to share with you another one of my awesome worst to best ranking lists to share with you guys today. Now, I thought that for this one, since we just had the release of the latest Mission Impossible movie in the form of Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 2. And since I already probably uploaded my review of that film earlier today, I just figured now would be a perfect time for me to do a ranking of all 7 of the current Mission Impossible films. I did think that maybe we should wait till Dead Reckoning Part 2. Not sure when that film will come out and then do a ranking then. Maybe I might do an updated video, but this was just something that 7 films out right now. I think this is a good number to do a solid ranking video on, so that's why I'm doing it here today. So if you do happen to enjoy this video by the end, please do not forget to like, share, and subscribe. Keep track of me on my future videos. And remember, if you guys have any ideas for future ranking videos or review videos or reaction videos, or just any general idea discussion video in general, let me know in the comments down below, and I will be sure to try to get them up as soon as I can. So before I start, I just want to let you guys know that my list might be a little bit different in terms of how I rank these 7 films, so just don't take it too personal if there's a movie in a certain position, because this is my list, my opinion. So let's start off with what, in my opinion, I consider to be my least favorite Mission Impossible film in the series. Alright, my least favorite Mission Impossible film might surprise some people, but it has to go to Mission Impossible 3. This is the only Mission Impossible film that I can openly say I really don't like this film. It is by far, to me, the most forgettable out of the current 7 films. I only saw this movie once, and for the life of me, I quite literally do not remember what the plot was. I don't remember much about this film. I remember there are small elements about it that I do remember, but in terms of what the actual film was about, I don't remember anything. I don't remember any major cool action scenes that really stand out. I don't remember exactly why the villain was supposed to be important. There are 2 elements about this film I remember, and that is that this is the film that Benji was introduced, which he would be like a long-standing character from that point forward. And the entire last third of this film, I just did not buy at all. There's a scene where apparently Ethan and his wife at that time get captured by the villain, and Ethan has a bomb in his head, and he needs to essentially shock and kill himself, and his wife, who has probably never held a gun, has to kill like 3 or 4 armed professional killers in this area and then revive Ethan. And that entire sequence did not work at all. I did not buy that entire section at all, and it was just like, I've seen this movie once, and even when I want to do I want to binge all these films, this is the one I skip because there's very little about this film I think is really important to future films. There's like a few elements, but it's just like nothing really happened. You're not missing anything. This is the one I skip. I know that a lot of people like the third one, but this is just the one that I flat out am just not a fan of, and I have no interest in ever seeing it again, which is why, to me, it is my least favorite Mission Impossible film in the series. Now, taking the number 6 spot is, from my guess, the one that I think that most people dislike the most, and that has to go to Mission Impossible 2. I really like this film. I like this film so much that I actually, in high school, did a project on John Woo, and the 3 films of his that I focused on were pretty much the project was you would pick a director, and then you would pick 3 of your favorite films of his, and then you would explain certain things that he does in all his films. And I picked John Woo, and 3 films that I picked was Hard Boiled, Face Off, and Mission Impossible 2. This movie is the personification of early 2000s action films. Every single trope that you could imagine happened within that awesome decade of action films, Mission Impossible 2 has. And oh my god, I love Tom Cruise's hair. I love it when I love his longer hair look. I mean, now he kind of sports his much shorter look, which is very similar to how he looked in the very first Mission Impossible film. But dude, I love Tom Cruise when he has longer hair. I thought the action set pieces in this one was interesting, and a lot of people thought the whole virus element with Chimera was a dumb idea. But as far as I know, this is the only one that does this. The other films either focus on some kind of list or it's a nuclear bomb. This one was unique that it focused on something that could be pretty serious in the form of a virus that, if you actually saw the effects of it in the film, was pretty brutal. I think the villain was not really the strongest, but I think he did his part. I think Ethan's primary love interest in this film also did a pretty good job. There were a number of key action scenes in this film that still stand out very much pretty well to me. Again, I think just Tom Cruise just kills it. Although he kills it every single time. As I think Ethan Hunt, I do think that that's without question his most iconic character. Just like Keanu Reeves as like John Wick and Neo. But this was just a blast. I had a lot of fun with this film, but I understand why some people don't like it that much or think it's a bad movie, but I certainly don't. I had a lot of fun with this film. I've seen it several times. I would even say this is out of this 7. I've seen this one probably the third most times, and I just have a blast with this film, which is why I'm more than happy to put it as the number 6 spot on my list. Number 5 on the list has to go to the very first Mission Impossible film. This movie, it started it all. It pretty much established a lot of the key rules that all the Mission Impossible films, for the most part, would typically follow. I do believe this was like the first movie that Tom Cruise produced, and that will be like a long-standing thing moving forward. I think he's produced like most of these films, but I think when he does that, he has like a lot more care and wants to have a much more involvement in these films to make sure that they're successful. And I think it started here. I think seeing Ethan at the kind of like semi-beginning of his spy career, I thought was great. Obviously, the sequence of him trying to get the list and being hung in that white room is iconic to this day. I think that the train sequence at the end is still very iconic, which is interesting because I think they tried doing a train. They did a train sequence in Dead Reckoning, but it just wasn't quite as memorable. It was still pretty good. But yeah, I think this one just is just. It's the one that started it all, and therefore you kind of have to enjoy it for what it is, and I still do. There's some elements about it that I think are like really outdated for time, sure, but I think it makes sense because given the time that film came out, and that's why I don't think you can really hold too much against it, if that at all. So it's a great film. I haven't seen it as many times as other entries in this series, but it's still just a fantastic first film, and definitely one that I would recommend to anyone who's looking to get started. Like, yeah, you definitely need to check out the first one, which is why it's number 5 on my list. Okay, so number 4 on my list actually is going to go to the most recent one in the form of Mission Impossible: Dead Reckoning Part 1. I had a good time with this film. I didn't like it as much as other installments, obviously. I do think the idea of the threat of the AI was handled pretty well in how they projected how effective it was actually pretty frightening. I thought some of the action set pieces were amazing. I mean, seeing Tom Cruise kind of jump off a cliff, off a motorcycle with a parachute is cool. It just, if you've seen the trailer, they pretty much showed you the whole stunt. It doesn't really extend much after that, which I was kind of disappointed about. It's like each from, I would say from Ghost Protocol on, there's like a key main stunt that they want to show off, and I think that the other ones before this one, they did a better job of like showing you enough of it but not showing you the whole sequence. They didn't do that with Dead Reckoning. You pretty much saw the whole sequence. It doesn't really expand too much after that, which I was a little bit disappointed about. I thought a lot of the newer characters, they definitely added some new characters. I think they surprisingly fit perfectly into this franchise, which I was surprised about. I didn't think the main villain was the AI, but like the main physical threat I thought was okay, but it was just weird how we're introducing this element 7 films in, and this is like a character that is like very big into Ethan's origins of how he was able to get into the IMF. I did think that was a bit odd. I thought that the team dynamic was very, very great, and they felt very, very palace. And I thought the whole element of this AI being able to manipulate information and the tech that they're so reliant on made it a very, very credible threat. I'm very curious to see where this is going to go when Part 2 comes out. I'm not sure when Part 2 is going to come out. And I think this film does a good enough job being... It's one half of a 2-part story, but I think they do a good enough job that the threat hasn't been finished, but we know what we are looking for, and I think that's fine. But I think that because it is part of a 2-part series, it's just not as strong. It's in my opinion kind of similar to like, Harry Potter definitely definitely Hollows Part 1 and 2. It's just like, okay, Part 1 and 2 have different feels. They connect together pretty well, but in my opinion, Part 2 is definitely stronger than Part 1, and I feel like that will be the case when Part 2 comes out. So I do think that between the two parts, this is going to be the weaker entry, which for me makes it perfectly sense to fit in the middle of the pack between the 7 primary films that we have currently, which is why I'm happy in putting it in the number 4 spot on my list. So number 3 on my list is gonna have to go to Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol. Now, after being very disappointed with Mission Impossible 3, I think that this was a massive tone change moving forward, and I think it started with Ghost Protocol. I thought I still had a lot of fun. This is like, I think, the only Mission Impossible film I actually saw in IMAX, and I think that they really cranked up every aspect of this film, and that would continue to carry on the momentum over the next 2 films in the form of Rogue Nation and Fallout. Not so much in Dead Reckoning, even though Dead Reckoning was still a fantastic film. I think that having Ethan have to go on the run after a disastrous opening mission was great. I thought the villain doesn't stand out too much, but given his position, I thought it worked for the film. I don't think villains need to be like too over the top. You can kind of keep them grounded and established without it being too much. I don't think he was like too memorable, but I think he just served his purpose well. But I think that the whole scenario of each key section of the film worked out pretty well, because you have the first scene and first moment like in Russia, and I absolutely love the opening. I think Ghost Protocol has probably my favorite opening with the prison break of any Mission Impossible film. I thought that was amazing. I love the use of the intro and how they kind of showed little clips of future films, and the music that was amazing too. Tom Cruise climbing on the outside of the tallest building in the world, still amazing. Still cannot believe he actually did that. It was a fun scene. I thought that Jeremy Renner's character also worked, even though I think this is like the most he gets to do out of any of the films. I thought he was great. The team was great. I thought the action scenes was great, and I absolutely loved the ending. I I think it's a little bit corny that, like, when he's about to stop the bomb, he says mission accomplished. It's corny, but it works. And in my theater, when that happened, there was like a massive roar from the crowd, including me. I had a fun time with this film. It's great. I think this is when Mission Impossible was like taken just to the next level above the first 3 films, and it all started here. In that momentum, again, as I said earlier, will continue on over the next couple films, which is why I think Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol is number 3 on my list. Number 2 on my list has to go to Mission Impossible 5. This is a very, very strong entry in the Mission Impossible franchise. I had a blast seeing this film. However, I will say that part of my enjoyment of it is just how intertwined with Rogue Nation it is. I would even say that those 2 are the ones that like kind of connect the most, and they work off each other very, very well. I thought that a lot of elements that were continued on from Rogue Nation were handled very, very well here. I thought the threat worked, even though it was kind of traditional for like Mission Impossible films. I thought that the use of the team, I think everyone in the team very much stepped up and had a key moment. I would even say this one probably had the most amount of slower character moments that I really appreciated, and I do enjoy moments where characters just kind of sit down and just talk about the dynamic and the importance and just how much Ethan actually cares about the people in his life, despite the fact that it causes problems. I mean, you could say that is a problem I think any agent would have, where he does not, like, sometimes he's not willing to sacrifice his friends and those close to him, even though he knows it probably was the smarter thing to do. And that can be a serious character flaw, and that has some major consequences in this film. And it's like one of the primary character trait that makes Ethan such a unique character, and not just this film, but I think just in the spy film genre in general. And I think Fallout handled that pretty well. I thought that Henry Cavill's character, I certainly did not see the twist of his character coming. I thought he would kind of stay the path that they kind of introduced that he was going. I'm glad it played out the way that it did. I thought that the last third of this film was very, very action-packed. I would even say it's easily the second strongest third act out of any of the Mission Impossible films. This was just a blast to see. I saw this multiple times in theaters. I think I saw it at least twice in theaters. This was just great. easily one of the strong, not just one of the strongest Mission Impossible films, but easily one of the strongest action films I've seen over the last decade, which is why I'm happy to place it as number 2 on my list. And closing off this list at the top, my favorite Mission Impossible film of all time has to go to Mission Impossible Rogue Nation. There's a lot of elements about this film that they're just my favorite out of any Mission Impossible film. I think the primary villain is definitely my favorite. I like how this one, Ethan, also again is like has to go on the run. His own government, his own agency is after him, so you're not sure who he can actually trust. This was also the introduction of Elsa, who was by far my second favorite character in the entire franchise, under only Ethan Hunt. I think she did amazing. I think Rebecca Ferguson is an incredible actress, and she just absolutely kills this role in the following 2 films after Rogue Nation. I think this one also puts Ethan's team in the most danger, and even though this takes place before Fallout, this is kind of where it kind of shows like the general flaw of Ethan, and I think they bounce off each other pretty well, and that's why I think that out of any of the films, I think that Rogue Nation and Fallout really work together as a 2-pair series of entries in this franchise, and which is why I think those 2 are the strongest. But I do think that a lot of the stronger elements were also in this one. I thought that the action scene with Ethan underwater was incredible. That's by far my favorite sequence that Tom Cruise has ever done, because he actually trained himself to hold his breath for 6 minutes, and I think to me that is a lot more impressive than climbing on the outside of a building or jumping off the cliff on a motorcycle. Or this is the one where he was hanging outside a plane. I mean, that to me was the scene that automatically made him eclipse Jackie Chan in terms of like the ultimate action practical star. That is the one that shot Tom Cruise. It's like at that point he's like, the man was literally hanging on the outside of a plane. And every time I see that sequence, and even when I see it on repeat, this is the Mission Impossible film I've seen the most amount of times, I'm still blown away. It's like, I cannot believe he did that. And this has my favorite of a lot of elements. This is an incredible film. Just so much fun. Just great. Any aspect of Mission Impossible that you could love, it is absolutely handled to the max in Rogue Nation, which is why it is going to probably remain my favorite Mission Impossible film of all time moving forward. So that is my list of all 7 of the current Mission Impossible films. Now, if you've seen all or most of these films, how would you rank them? Share your own ranking of the Mission Impossible films in the comments down below. And like always, thank you guys for watching. You're awesome, and I'll see you next time.